All right. Welcome to another episode of The Close Up, a part of Orlando Magic HQ. I'm your host, Stephen Cameron, and today we got a really fun episode. We got my friend Bryce Simons of Motor City Hoops and the Game Theory podcast joining the show. He was on earlier this season. We did a deep dive on the rookies, Noah Penda and Jace Richardson, and that was great. And so we had so much fun. We're like, hey, let's talk about the Magic again. This episode, we talk a lot about the Magic's kind of up and down season a little bit. We get into some thoughts on the defensive identity and kind of where it's at and why it's not as strong as it used to be. We obviously talk about how it can be hard to play consistent winning basketball when your team is dealing with a lot of newness with rotations of players being in and out, and even adding, the addition of a player like Desmond Bane. And we also hit on Anthony Black, the year that he's having. And then we get deep into the deadline. Oh, we also talk about Paulo. Obviously, we talk about Paulo too. But then we get into the trade deadline and how the Magic might operate around the deadline and what their goals are and how they could try and accomplish those. Then at the very end, we talk a little bit about playoff rotation. So it's a packed episode. Bryce is awesome. He follows this league like it's his full-time job, and he's got a full-time job. It's his second job that he pretty much does as a full-time job as well. And he's very, I would say he gives a very level-headed, balanced observation of teams without giving too much bias. And I think that just brings a really nice perspective on the Magic, right? It's always good when you can have someone who is not watching it day in and day out, but watching it enough to be able to know trends and see how players are performing well. And he does that to the T. It's very good. So I hope you all enjoy the conversation with Bryce. I know I did. We'll have him again in the future of this season. But before we get to that conversation, let's just talk about the state of the Magic right now. It's been up and down, right? They've been dealing with some health issues this season. We've had Mo Wagner only play 2 games so far this season. Franz just got back for the last 2 games. Jalen Suggs has been out for 15 games or so, or 10-ish games. I don't know off the top of my head right now. Sorry, I don't have that page up. This team has just been very inconsistent with their health recently, and it's caused a lot of fluctuation with this roster and how they're performing. Since the new year, January 2nd, they've lost a game to the Bulls. They won versus the Indiana Pacers. They lost to the Washington Wizards. They won versus the Brooklyn Nets in overtime. They lost to the 76ers. They won versus New Orleans. They won the first matchup in Memphis in Germany. Then they lost the second matchup in a horrible fashion to the Memphis Grizzlies in London. And it's just been an up and down season, and I think they're just kind of feeling it. We're all feeling it. They, kind of middle of the pack offensively. They're 12th in the league defensively, which is a huge red flag for me. We get into that in this episode, in this conversation with Bryce, on why we think that they're struggling so much on the defensive end and what needs to happen for them to kind of find that again. But overall, I think there's some optimism, at least I have, for this team. Franz and Mo coming back, they're going to find their form and their rhythms pretty soon in the next handful of games, I imagine. I think Jalen Suggs is around the corner. I imagine if this was January, he would have played those games this past week, or not January. If this was March, he would have played those games with where he's at physically. But I think they're probably just let's give him another game or two, get back home to Orlando, and then we can bring him back home a little bit easier, or back on the court a little bit easier when we're at home, because their next couple of games, they have 2 games at home versus the Charlotte Hornets on the 22nd and then versus the Cleveland on the 24th. I could see us getting Jalen Suggs back around that time frame. That's just my guess. I don't have any insight on that. I'm just assuming that he's probably close enough to where we could get him pretty soon. And they need him. Jalen Suggs is really important to this team. Bryce and I talk about that in this conversation on how much value he brings to this roster with his disruptive defensive identity and what he brings offensively to the team as well. Paulo's starting to play a lot better. There's still some frustrations with his game. The team in whole is frustrating defensively right now. It's very annoying to see how inconsistent they are on that side of the ball, and that should be their bread and butter and what makes them win games. And I think a lot of it has to do with depth, player depth, and what they're being asked to do, and when they are missing so many players. It's just been a frustrating season. So I'm still optimistic. I think they're going to find some rhythm. I think they're going to go on a run here and get themselves higher in the standings. That's just me, though. I'm an optimist, and it'll be interesting to see how they navigate the deadline because they have some things they have to do to order to get under the luxury tax, but they also need to find a way to improve this roster in some sort of move. So we'll see what that looks like. Before we get to the conversation with Bryce Simons, real quick plug, check out our Patreon program. It's great. We're constantly talking basketball there. There's some exclusive content for you guys that comes out. It helps us continue to put out stuff for you all. So check that out. And then if you could just like and subscribe to this show and make sure you're following us on all social handles or media platforms at Orlando Magic HQ. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy this conversation with Bryce Simons. All right, everyone. Like I said in the intro, we got Bryce Simons of Motor City Hoops and Game Theory Podcast. Bryce, welcome to the show. Nice to have you again. Thanks for joining. How you doing?
What's up, Steven? I'm doing well. Excited to talk about the Magic, who are a very interesting team in the East. I'm sure Magic fans maybe think that they're a forgotten team in the East, but I think still just kind of hanging around, being sneaky there. And as I'm sure we'll talk about, have some avenues they could explore, or just, hey, let's see if this team we put together this summer can actually play minutes together and what the chemistry can develop if they ever actually get an opportunity to do that.
You said a few things, and I think for the biggest thing that I took away from that is I think most of us are just feeling frustrated about this team in the East, right? They've had some frisky moments. They've had some parts where they look, wow, if they can maintain this, they could be like really good and have a real presence in the postseason this year. They went like a month and a half or something like that without winning 2 games in a row. They just won 2 games in a row for the first time, and I think since like November, just this past week, and then got blown out on their second game in Europe when they played the Memphis Grizzlies. So it's been a little, and then of course you got like the injuries in sort of a similar fashion as they happened last year, just to a lesser extent, right? Like first last year we had Paulo go out with his oblique injury. This year he had a groin issue. Didn't keep him out as long, but he was out again. And then Franz goes out. Same. Franz went out last year. And then this year again, Suggs goes out. Suggs went out season-ending injury pretty much last year. This year, he should be back in the next handful of games, I'd imagine. But it's just been like, we need to see this team healthy, because when they're healthy, that starting lineup in the few minutes that we have seen has been one of the best in the league, and we just haven't seen that. Bryce, before we get into player specific, we'll talk about Anthony Black here in a little bit. We'll talk about Paulo and all these guys. Just from an outsider perspective, your part of your job with Game Theory is you watch a lot of basketball. You watch the whole league pretty detailed. You guys talk about these teams regularly in deep fashion on that podcast. And you also cover the Detroit Pistons, one of the best teams in the league this year, deeply for Motor City Hoops. When you look at the Magic and you evaluate where they are at currently with this season compared to what we were all thinking about them and what the season could be at the start of the year and where they stand today, as an outsider, what are you seeing from this team, and kind of what's just your opinion on this team right now? Are they a good team? Are they a bad team? Like, what do you think?
Yeah. So real quick, I looked up the Bane, Wagner, Suggs, Banchero, 125 minutes, a net rating of 15.7. So obviously not nearly the sample you would want, but very positive in the sample that you have gotten. So I think that is important to note. My biggest thing when watching Orlando, listen, if you would have told me that they were middle of the pack in offensive rating, I would have been like, okay, that probably makes sense, especially at the halfway point, right? Like you still got to figure out, how do we implement Desmond Bane and use him? And there's always part of that goes with it, as much as I thought he made a lot of sense for them. If you would have told me they were 12th in defensive rating, I would not have believed you. And I think that's probably my biggest thing. And I don't watch them night in and night out the way you do. But I think when I watch them, that kind of is my thing, is where is it? And maybe it's just the Jalen Suggs, like his mentality and the attitude he brings, the disruption he brings, maybe just missing that so much for how many games has he missed now? Almost 20 of their games. So he's pretty much played 50% of their games. Maybe that's a huge factor there. I do think Suggs is one of the best perimeter defenders in the NBA. But I think that's one of the things, is it just hasn't looked as physical and disruptive as what I loved about their defense last season. And I don't know if that tracks for what you see night in and night out, but that is in my notes when I watch them.
So let's just pause there for a second, because I've kind of made some posts about this recently online. And this is kind of the first time I'm getting to talk about it, because for full transparency, I haven't recorded a podcast since December, just with kind of how life has been with me recently. I started a new job, blah, 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 blah. But I want to talk about the defense for a second. This past year, when we acquired Desmond Bane, they sent out Contavious Caldwell-Pope and Gary Harris. And we can say what we want about them offensively as players, but what those two players did provide when they were healthy and on the court, which KCP was healthy most of the year, was more point of attack defense and point of attack depth there. And what I think we are seeing is right now a team that's truly struggling with capable point of attack defenders to kind of round out their defensive identity. And when, in my opinion, when you can't slow down guys as easily on the perimeter, you're making everyone else's lives a little bit harder. When Jalen Suggs goes out, you can backfill for him with Anthony Black, who is a very capable high-level perimeter defender. When Franz Wagner goes out, who in my opinion is a very underrated point of attack perimeter wing defender, you're replacing him with guys, in my opinion, that are much less lateral quickness and really kind of just probably more ideally put in like a more help defense type of position instead of let me be the main guy coming at this small forward or power forward or shooting guard, whatever, these bigger players on the wings coming in. Because like Paulo Banchero, Tristan da Silva, these are the types of players that they've been kind of bringing in and filling in for Franz when he was out. And they're just, Paulo, he's an okay defender. I wouldn't say he's amazingly well, but I wouldn't say he's super, like, I don't really call him a negative defender anymore. And then Tristan da Silva, he's fine, but I think he's more fine for like second unit type of players. So I think you're just asking too much of what these players can actually do to try and fill in for that point of attack defense. And I think it's just making everyone's lives harder. And we're seeing we lost some defensive identity when we got rid of the depth with the point of attack style of defenders that they had with KCP, who could take on more one-on-one type of point of attack defense. Gary Harris could come in, even though he was limited and often injured and not playing, but he was someone that could play more point of attack defense in both units at times. And I just think we're finally starting to see not having that type of personnel on this team kind of like affect their identity a bit. Does that track with you?
Yeah. I mean, so I was going to say it's interesting. I think what people miss sometimes is, I always bring this up with the Nuggets whenever they move Christian Brown into the starting lineup. It wasn't that Christian Brown couldn't replace what Contavious Caldwell-Pope was giving them. It's who was going to replace Christian Brown in the second unit. And to your point there, it's not that Anthony Black can't replace what Jalen Suggs does in some capacity, right? It's, okay, well, now what are you bringing off the bench? Now you're having to play Tyus Jones a lot more minutes. And like, I think that's been and Jace, who's a rookie at the end of the day. The names you mentioned at the wing forward positions, Tristan da Silva. I can go back to my pre-draft notes, Steven, and it was on the ball, he's going to struggle. Off the ball, he's always going to be in the right position. Noah Pinda, kind of the same thoughts for me in terms of the type of defender. And then the other thing is, I love the center rotation in Orlando. I've really come around on Wendell Carter Jr. and what he provides a team. I love Goga Bitadze. Like, I love Goga. You know, I know Mo hasn't played very many games yet, but even Mo, Jonathan, Isaac's a very good minute by minute defender, but like in general, none of those guys are Rudy Gobert or Victor Wembanyama or Chet Holmgren and not many guys are, but that are just like eating up anything that comes to the rim. So my point is, those two things play hand in hand in terms of, if you don't have these really good point of attack defenders, you also don't have elite rim protection behind them. You might have fine rim protection behind them, but you don't have elite rim protection behind them. And I think all of those things play together.
Yeah. You know, Jonathan Isaac 2 years ago solved some of those issues. Jonathan Isaac, the player today, is a good defender, not an elite defender anymore. And I think that's starting to be an issue for the Magic too, particularly at the limited minutes that he's playing. I mean, he's had a couple of games in the hand recently where he's getting DMPs for Noah Penda because he's just a black hole on the offensive side. Shout out to Noah Penda for being able to provide on that end of the floor, which I kind of thought would be where he struggled a little bit. Granted, he's a rookie too. It's the depth of defense I think, like you mentioned, is really being shown when you're having all these injuries and these players are having to step up. I think some positives that we have seen through this is we have seen guys like Noah Penda get an opportunity and play pretty well. We have seen this insane leap offensively from Anthony Black, which has just been a blast. You're going to get a dunk from him in some fun capacity every single game. I don't remember the numbers completely off the top of my head, but I think he's got something like between 40 and 50 dunks so far this season. And I'm pretty sure that's more than he had total in his first 2 seasons altogether. He's just playing at an all-time high confidence-wise. But, to bring it back to the defensive point, this team without their top 5 elite defensive identity is a team that is going to struggle because they don't have enough offensive firepower to make up for the lack of defense. And being 12th in defensive rating isn't a bad thing, but when you're not top 10 in offense, it's not equaling out to what you need to be playing consistent high-level basketball against 500 teams or better. And, if you look further, how is this going to look in the playoffs, right? The good thing is, I think Jalen Suggs is coming back soon. I wouldn't be surprised if he's back in the next game or two once they get back home from Europe. And, he can get in, they can do their testing in the training facility and kind of get him back on the court. I wouldn't be surprised there if they just said, let's take this trip off in Europe, let you just rest and recover and enjoy the trip. And then we'll get you back when we're back home and a little bit more controlled. Sorry, that was long-winded.
Oh, no, I think him getting back would be obviously changes a lot, right? Because a lot of what we're talking about is Suggs not being there. So now Black's in the starting lineup. And then these 2 guys are your guys off the bench that maybe aren't as good of defenders. Franz is out. So now you're having to start Tristan Da Silva as opposed to Da Silva coming off the bench, where this off the ball in the right position defender makes a lot more sense. A starting lineup of, everybody knows the starting lineup, what it would be if healthy, and then Anthony Black off the bench is like, well, man, they just don't stop bringing in good perimeter defenders. Or, you play Da Silva strategically with certain lineups where he doesn't have to guard, he's guarding the 3rd option on the perimeter, and you just strategically make sure you match that up, So I have hope for this team in terms of once it's healthy. It's just one thing I do think is important is it is a new team, right? While a lot of the names, almost every name we brought up so far was on this roster last year, minus Pinda and then obviously Bane. Inserting Bane into this is really important, and not getting enough minutes in the regular season to figure out the offensive side of things, I think could hinder their playoff potential, success, whatever. So hopefully they can get healthy and then stay healthy moving forward through the second half of the season.
I don't think that's a point people talk about enough, particularly in the Magic circle, that this team is still new. And it probably still feels very new to a lot of players since they have had so much inconsistency with health so far this season. And, how many minutes has Bane and Suggs actually played together with, next to the starting 5? You actually read it earlier. It's not much, and those guys need time together. And it hopefully as long as no more injuries come, they can do that. Mo Wagner has played 2 games, or no, he's played. He's played 2 games since his season-long ACL injury that he had last year in December. So they haven't had a lot of consistency, and they need this time to gel. Before we dive into any players specifically, assuming this team finds some health, how do you kind of feel about them through the rest of the season, kind of going into the playoffs? Are you still hopeful that they can be a threat? Are you are you seeing too many question marks that makes you think they still have a lot to figure out? What's your gut check on this team, presumably healthy going forward?
Well, here's my thought on the Eastern Conference in general. And I said this on Game Theory a couple weeks ago. People may not find the East to be as good as the Western Conference, and that's fine. I'll hear that out. I think it's going to be very competitive. Right? Competitiveness has levels, and maybe they don't think maybe the Eastern Conference is the little brother, but if you told me Orlando makes a run through the Eastern Conference, that's not where I'm putting my money, but I don't know that I'm putting money on any team in the Eastern Conference right now. The team behind me here is number 1 in the East and on a 60-win pace at time of recording. And I can quickly label off some flaws on this roster and that team that could really be detrimental in the playoff. First and foremost is 3-point shooting, right? And I think you can do that with just about every team. Do the Knicks have the depth? Okay. Is there enough chemistry and continuity with the Knicks? Do the Magic have the floor spacing, the shooting, the health? Do they have the backup guard play? Like, do they have the rotation, right? Because Tyus Jones hasn't been what I think a lot of us thought he was going to be. The Sixers. What are the Sixers? The Celtics. Are you really going to make a run through the Eastern Conference with Nimi Keita, who I love? I think he's been awesome. And Luka Garza in your front line, right? Like, I'm not trying to throw shade at anybody.
Sure.
I'm just saying these teams are flawed in a way that you can very easily talk yourself into that being a quote unquote fatal flaw in the playoffs, which makes, for me, the Eastern Conference a lot of fun and very exciting, but also very wide open. And so I think if I'm a Magic fan, I take some, whatever you want to call it, hope, whatever you want to call it, in that if they can maybe make a sneaky move at the deadline, shore up the rotation, whatever, get healthy. I think I have more confidence, Steven, this may sound crazy after the conversation we just had, that they will defend at a high level when they need to. I still think they have to figure out the offensive stuff. Like, I love Paolo. I had Paolo number 1, and I wasn't doing a ton of draft stuff then, but I was doing enough. I thought Paolo was going to be a better ball mover and passer and make quicker decisions and stuff like that. Like, I do have some questions on, are they always using Bane in the right way? Can Paolo and Franz reach their 95th percentage outcome playing next to each other? Or do they inherently take each other down to their 80th percentile because they don't fit together? Like stuff like that. I think offensively is where I still have the most questions, even though we threw out some of those things on the defensive end.
It's interesting because they brought in Joe Prunty to come in and help revitalize the offense. And I have seen some improvements, right? Like, they're not a bottom 10 offense this year, which is lovely for once. But there are still some question marks on like you brought up Bane. It doesn't seem like they're using him the best that they can. Like, I'm going to pull it up real quick
while you're pulling up. I will say this. It's gotten better since the beginning of the season. I thought at the beginning of the year,
sure.
Like, I don't call out coaching staffs because I know how hard it is to be a coach. It looked like to me they didn't have any idea how to use him. Or
yes.
And here's the other thing. You don't always know. Maybe Bane walked in and said, hey, I want to be used on the ball. And then eventually when it wasn't going well, they're like, no, we're going to use you more off the ball. I do think when I watched them play recently, I'm like, okay, that action makes sense. Okay, they're getting them the ball in these spots. And here's the other thing. In fairness, when everybody's in and out of the lineup, everybody's role changes. And so that's a huge part of it as well.
And that is true for sure. The roles are changing constantly right now with people going out and people coming back in. But the offense has improved, and I think players have improved within the offense. Like, you brought up Paulo Banchero earlier about his decision-making and how fast he makes those. He still struggles with that at times, but where he's at with his decision-making now and how fast he's making those decisions is leaps and bounds faster than it was at the beginning of the season. I am rarely yelling, dude, why are you ISOing this ball so much now? Like, he is moving the ball. He still will make some boneheaded decisions. He will still sometimes, instead of kicking out, take that, contested mid-range 2 with 2 or 3 players on him instead of passing to one of the open men, like kind of recognizing that situation sooner and making those passes. But he also is making those decisions faster. And I just think with a guy like Paulo, like, it's never going to be a perfect system with him in that aspect, at least this young, because like, he's going to want to take some of these harder shots and try and use his size and muscle and his ability to make tough shots at times. That's just kind of ingrained into his DNA, but he has made some improvements there. There's still plenty of growth that needs to happen there. But then circling back to like Desmond Bane, like, he is being helpful. He is providing a lot more to this offense that many of the past shooting guards could not. Like, the amount of times where he's got the ball at the 3, it's being contested and he just drives to the basket and goes for a layup. Like, that's something KCP and Gary Harris never did. We just didn't see that type of stuff. Every now and then KCP would take like a step in, 1 dribble pull up 2 instead of the 3. And he was actually pretty efficient at those. But, Desmond Bane, like, he's providing a lot more versatility with the ball in his hands, being able to play make a bit more, being able to drive to the basket a lot more. But the thing is, like, you brought him in to be an elite 3-point shooter, and he's not even taking 5 attempts per game. And that's where he's, a career 6+ attempts a game. And that's That's frustrating for a team that needs more shooting. Keep in mind, like, I do have to recognize he's also probably the only shooter in the starting lineup that's respected the way he is. And so his 3-point shots are not always super clean and easy to get off, but it's the joke. Something's in the water because you bring in one of the best 3-point shooters in the league and he's shooting career lows at 33%. You know?
And it is the volume as well. This is the low. I didn't recognize this number until you said it right there. So looking it up, it's the lowest 3-point attempts per 100 possessions of his career.
Yeah, it's frustrating. Like, he'll come out of games only taking 4, and I'm just like, that should be double. Particularly when in training camp, Bryce, they said they wanted him taking like 9+. It's like, what are we doing? Like, that was words that came out of their mouth. I'm not just pulling that out of the number. I actually was afraid to say the number because they said 10. And I'm like, I can't say that. I mean, that's what they said, but it's like, that seems a little unrealistic. So I'll just dial it back down to 9+. You know, I'd be happy if he was even just taking 6 per game on average. And it's just odd there, but they are doing some good things. There are some good things that are happening. When Paolo and Bane do a pick and roll together, something good always comes. Whether the ball goes in or not, you're always getting pretty much a clean look from that, which has been really lovely. I am pro Bane, by the way. I love him being on this team. Anthony Black, you just had a really nice segment about him on Game Theory that dropped this morning on Monday the 19th. And it's been refreshing. He is a bright spot for this Magic this year with the ups and downs of this team. I think the constant high, the constant smile on everyone's faces, the leap of play that Anthony Black is bringing to this roster. Defensively, he's playing really well for the most part. Offensively, though, is where I think everyone is just like, wow. He's attacking the basket a lot more. He's just playing with a lot more confidence. His shooting is coming around a decent bit. He still is going to struggle, like you guys mentioned. His pull-ups and off the dribbles are just, they're not good, but his catch and shoot numbers are really promising from 3. His corners are like, I think you mentioned was like 50 something percent from 50. 3.
Yeah.
It's gnarly. He just had one of the most insane dunks that anyone has seen, and it broke the internet. Anthony Black, Bryce, I'm just handing it to you here. Anthony Black.
I want to quickly say I also have scattered notes, multiple notes through my Magic watch of put Paolo Banchero in the short roll. Like, I love when they use him as a ball screen guy. And again, that may be something that Banchero doesn't love to do, but man, I think that puts the defense in a really tough spot, whether it's with Bane, whether it's with Anthony Black, Suggs, him and Franz, I think would be awesome. Maybe teams could switch that because they're so like size, but I still think finding creative ways to use Banchero in ball screens as a screener is a lot of fun. Anthony Black, I think he's really good defensively. I do want to start there because I think I referred to him as a 2-way off-ball guard on Game Theory. And I think that's an important distinction here with him over maybe some guys who take an offensive leap or whatever. Like, he is really impactful. You know, Sam and I did our top 20 defenders, top 25 defenders this summer. Anthony Black was like on my list over to the side. He didn't make our top 25. It's really hard to do that as a perimeter defender. We did have some. I think Suggs was on our list. But like Anthony Black, as I go through every team, if I'm thinking of defenders, I stop and write his name down. You know what I mean? So like, he is a good defender. He can be impactful on that end. I have a lot of notes like, he stayed with, listen, I realize Jeremiah Fears is a rookie. I've watched Jeremiah Fears cook a lot of NBA defenders just with his speed, and Black was able to keep up with him. I have a note from a Miami Heat game where he has this point of attack possession where he's able to stop at the cutoff point, elevate, and block the jump shot with his left hand. A game against the Nuggets where he has a clutch sequence. Not only does he knock down shots, but he steals the ball from Jokic with an off-the-ball dig. So I think those things that he does on the defensive end are very impactful. And then the leap offensively. This was a really interesting player in that draft because it's like, is he on ball? Is he off ball? He doesn't shoot it well enough, but you knew he understood the game, like his cutting, his athleticism. His athleticism was very underrated in that draft, Steven. You know why? Because that's the same draft as the Thompson twins and Cam Whitmore. And so nobody talked about how athletic Anthony Black was. And I think Sam also made a good point the other day. He's gotten a little bit stronger. So now that shows up on the court practically. The shooting is obviously a huge part of it. But what I love the most is he can play on or off the ball. He can run a ball screen. He can attack off the bounce. But now he can space, catch, and shoot. I think he's a great cutter, can get out in transition. The versatility of that makes him so valuable to me. And I don't know if you wanted to get into the bigger picture conversation we had about Anthony Black in this team, but it makes for some interesting decisions at some point for Orlando because he's playing himself into a contract number that makes things potentially very tight for them moving forward and could disrupt like who stays, who goes, and all of that. So I think he's been incredible. He's probably working his way in. He's in the most improved conversation. And, I don't know. We'll see how the rest of the season goes, but definitely he's at least in that conversation. Guys like Gillespie, Conte, George, Ryan Rollins. We'll see how the second half of the season goes, but he's on that list.
And I agree. Like his offense has just been so fun. His catch and shoot numbers. I have when he doesn't take any dribbles from three, he's shooting at 38%, one dribble, 34%, and it drops a lot after about that. But that's just me quickly pulling it up. There's probably more accurate, from corners and stuff like that are pretty, like you mentioned earlier, his corner threes and catch and shoot are 50 something percent, which is pretty awesome. But yeah, we can talk about the bigger picture here for a second, because I think that's important. He is playing himself into a contract that is going to make this team have to make some tough decisions, potentially along the future. Cause it's if he's getting a 25, 30 plus $1 million contract, in the ballpark of what Jalen Suggs got or slightly below that, how does this team build a competitive roster when you have Paulo and Franz making max, Jalen Suggs making on average $30 million a year, Desmond Bane on a almost max 30 something million dollars a year too, and then Jalen Suggs, 25, 30, somewhere around there, I would imagine. That's a lot for a team that's going to be pushing the second apron every season for the foreseeable future after this season. It's going to be challenging. And it's you brought up some good points on the podcast. Do you have to move off Wendell Carter and find a cheaper starting center? How can you build they're just not going, they're gonna have to get off of Jonathan Isaac. I still think Jonathan Isaac provides value, but even today with his role now, his value to minutes play, his contract to minutes played do not add up anymore. And the Magic are going to have to start making these decisions where they have to have guys getting paid appropriately to the role and amount of time on the court. And that is not Jonathan Isaac getting 12 to 14 minutes a game anymore. If this team is healthy and Goga goes back to the third center and, he's not playing regular minutes, you can't have an $8 million center sitting on the bench anymore. Like getting DMPs. They just can't afford to have those luxuries that they used to be able to afford to have any longer, especially with what they do with Jalen Suggs. Now, Jalen Suggs, they have the benefit of time. It's coming up quick. They could offer him an extension this summer and hoping that he accepts a lower number, or the two parties could be off and say, hey, we're going to make this work. Going to restrict free agency isn't a bad thing. There's a lot of really good long-term relationships with a player and a team that happen that hit restricted free agency. Not everything turns into Jonathan Kuminga situation, right? But they could just say, hey, let's just see how this plays out. We got some financial things to figure out on our end. We want to be able to pay you properly. Let us figure some things out. Let's see you have another great year. And we talk about it in restricted free agency and go from there. But it's going to be hard. They might have to ask themselves next deadline or this summer, if Jalen Suggs keeps having injuries, can they keep all of them? Does Jalen Suggs need to be moved? I don't know.
I think my thing was, and this, Sam and I kept talking ourselves into this. Let's just work 25, 30, whatever. The issue is you don't start Jalen Suggs, Desmond Bane, Anthony Black, Franz Wagner, Banchero. Right?
Yeah.
You don't start those five guys. And so when you look at the potential of what that cap sheet could look like, it's you don't even have a center then, in that top five. And we mentioned as well, Wendell Carter Jr., we don't think he's on a bad contract, but now you're also adding a $20 million center to that, And Tristan Da Silva, Jace Richardson, Noah Pinda being good would be huge for this team because you have them on rookie scale deals through the majority of the years we're talking about. And to be clear, and to your point, this isn't a massive thing until the 27-28 season. So obviously you can get through it this year. Even if you signed an extension over this offseason with Anthony Black, that number doesn't kick in till the following year. So you would have at least till next year's deadline or the offseason after that to make some of these decisions. I do just think it's important to mention that while Magic fans should absolutely be excited about this growth and development of Anthony Black, as we find with all young teams, eventually they start to get expensive. Even Oklahoma City is eventually going to get to this, right? Eventually it's going to happen. We talk about all the time, are they going to keep Isaiah Hartenstein this summer or not, right? Eventually one of those guys is going to be a casualty of J-Dub and Shea all being on these numbers. And it may not be as massive, every team, it's a little bit different, but Orlando now, where they've committed this level of money to those 4 players, if all of a sudden you get another one that's even in that stratosphere, I find it hard to believe you can have 5 guys. I could be proven wrong here. I'm not necessarily a cap expert. I don't parade around as that, but to think that 5 guys at right around 30 or more per year, that seems like a lot, especially when you can't even start those 5 guys together.
Well, you turn into the New York Knicks, where you have an awesome 5 or 6, and then the rest is just super thin, and you're hoping you can get some luck with some vet minimum guys trying to get back into the higher thing. It's going to be really tough though, and you need depth. You have to have some depth. Shout out to
just on the Nick thing is important. Josh Hart, just to be clear though, is at $20 million.
Yeah.
Right. Your point is actually perfect. It's a great comparison, but as we've said, and you mentioned, what is your depth rounding out the roster? And again, Josh Hart isn't quite at the same number. You know what I mean? And so, and I don't even, it's the top 4 are probably similar because we don't need to do all the math, but the Knicks are an interesting point. That would be a counterpoint to what I said. The difference though is you start those 5 guys. You can start Jalen Brunson, Bridges, Hart, Anunoby, and Towns together. But again,
I don't think you want to play Paulo at the 5 more than a couple minutes per game in small segments. It doesn't seem like
that's something they've wanted to explore.
Yeah. And I'm not against Paul at the 5. He played at the 5 for Team USA a couple years ago. And that's something I've actually wanted them to explore more, not in big segments, but let's play Paul at the 5 for the next 2 to 3 minutes in transition, but in certain moments. Let's just see what that looks like a little bit more. There's been some big experimenting that I wish would happen more with this team. Paul at the 5, like I said, I would actually love to see more minutes of Goga and Wendell Carter next to each other. And it just doesn't happen. With all the injuries this team had, we couldn't get even a 2-minute segment of Goga and Wendell Carter next to each other, with Goga playing a little bit, or Wendell Carter playing a little bit more for, they've been struggling rebounding recently. Okay, put your 2 biggest guys there just for a few minutes and see if you can grab some rebounds for a little bit, and there's been some coach frustrations with a little bit of experimenting that I wish he would explore just a little bit more, particularly while we are in this still middle of the season. You got time to explore this stuff, and we're just not seeing it as much as I would like, but that's story for another day, in my opinion. But yeah, they're going to have some things to figure out with Anthony Black. As my friend Malik Grady, who comes on this show somewhat regularly, always says, these are good problems to have.
Absolutely.
I'd rather be talking about Anthony Black having exceeded our expectations than, man, he still didn't take that leap that we were hoping he would this summer. And now we're questioning, does he even fit with this team? Because he clearly fits, right? He's doing the things we wanted him to do, instead of he didn't grow like we needed him to. So maybe we actually look to move off of Anthony Black. This is this is a good problem to have. Shout out Sham God.
You would rather have this conversation than the conversation being, okay, Anthony Black hasn't grown. Tyus Jones has been a disappointment. They don't even have a third guard when healthy. What are they going to do at the deadline? They just traded all of these picks for Desmond Bane. They have to go get somebody that can provide some guard play off the bench because, this hasn't happened. Or listen, I love Jace Richardson, but we're having to depend on rookie Jace Richardson to try to do that, right? So it's absolutely a positive conversation that comes off a little bit negative because tough decisions may have to happen.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Speaking of tough decisions, do you have anything else you want to touch on before we go to the deadline?
No, let's do that.
Let's go to the deadline. I think it'll bring some other things up. But yeah, the deadline, trade deadline this year for the Magic is going to be interesting because I think they have to make a move. My thought process going into this deadline was pretty clear once they declined Jet Howard's 4th year. And they did that for a couple of reasons. One's because he just hasn't been very good. We can blame that on him. We can blame that on maybe they haven't put him in the best situation to grow with a consistent role for development, which I have a whole theory on that. But to me, they said, you know what? We can't afford his next contract at like $7-8 million a year past this season because we're going to get too expensive to kind of have those types of players on this roster right now. And we kind of already mentioned this. They have Paulo's extension kicking in. They're going to be hitting second apron like threshold pretty quickly for the foreseeable future. So what they need to do this season, in my opinion, and what I think they're going to try and do is they're going to try and get under the luxury tax so they can push out when they start hitting the repeater tax. That is my theory on what they're going to try and do. Steven's theory, not game theory, on what they're going to try and do is get underneath the luxury tax. Not that this ownership is cheap and like not willing to pay the tax. I think they are going to be willing to pay the tax because you don't make a move like acquiring Desmond Bane if you're not about that life. But listeners, if you don't know what the repeater tax is, it pretty much doubles what you pay in traditional tax. And you can only be a repeater tax team. I think you have to like 3 out of 4 years before you have like serious penalties on how you have to navigate tax and team building, as we have seen with teams like the Boston Celtics. So that is the
other thing is, if you're a taxpayer, that means you're not a tax receiver, right?
Yes.
Like, so that's like if you're the teams that are under the tax, then split up the tax team's money. So you don't, not only do you not get that, like if you were $1 over the tax, it's like, oh, no big deal. Well, no, it is a big deal because you don't get the distribution of you're paying $1, but you're not getting the distribution of all of the teams that are well above it. Once you get repeater, then I think it multiplies more. And then eventually, like Boston, for example, they have to be out of the tax 2 years in a row to reset the repeater because I think of how many years they've been over it. So it gets into, it's more of a money thing for your ownership. But it's like that is a real thing, right? Like we know that some owners, teams, organizations are more willing to pay it. Some aren't, so I think the interesting thing for you guys is Jet Howard's number is essentially like $20,000. What is it? 5529. Oh no, $50,000 short of getting them under the tax. So
yep.
The funny thing is, it's not just that, Jonathan Isaac still obviously gets you well under. I think Tyus Jones, $7 million. I wonder if there isn't a move to move out some of that money. And then can we bring in some sort of floor spacing wing to help us out, right? Like would that be the number one target? I mean, Sam Hauser type player or something like that?
I think so. I think this team, you still have to provide more spacing. You still need more shooting. And it would be, that's how I would go about it if I was in the Orlando Magic's. I just did a mock trade deadline exercise with a great group of people, and everyone, for the most part, took it pretty serious.
For what it's worth, I think I told you that I did one last year, and I didn't do it this year because I don't have time. But sure, when everybody is being serious, and those truly are a lot of fun. A lot of fun,
and I think just a good thought process exercise too.
Sure.
I learned what some of my players are valued at around the league, right? And I learned what it might take to move off of some contracts around the league with what are things. And I had to say yes to some things and no to others. And it was really interesting. But yeah, my goal was I got in a 3-team trade and brought in Fontecchio from Miami Heat. And, to provide, he was shooting I think 36-37% from 3 off of 4 attempts per game. Cool. We need more shooting. That's probably not going to happen in real life, but that was one of the moves that I made, was to get more shooting. And that was how I happened to acquire that. Now, granted, I think I'd like to go for a little bit of a better shooter, but it's going to be hard for this team to navigate because they have to clear under $5.5 million in tax while trying to address team shooting and also maintain at least 14 guys on the roster, which is going to be challenging. So they can't just, like you said, you can't just take away Jet Howard because you remove him. Sure, you're not even going to clear the tax, but then you have to replace him, which will keep you in the tax. So you have to move at least Jet and another player, or a singular player like Jonathan Isaac, which is going to be kind of hard to do, I think.
Yeah, so I was trying to put one together real quick. Like,
sure,
I didn't quite get there, and the pick stuff can go where, but like Goga and Tyus Jones for Sam Hauser would save you 5.53, and which is close.
Yeah,
and it would get Boston a center, and you get the floor spacer and Hauser. Like, I'm not like I haven't workshopped it enough. Again,
sure.
I don't know if picks have to go one way or the other. Hauser has some more years on his deal. So like all
the idea of a deal.
The idea of a deal of something like that. Obviously, like a Jonathan Isaac could be used in it. People could, see that as an advantageous contract in terms of one you can eventually get off. I think it's still almost half guaranteed for next year, but that's kind of the idea where, hey, you're almost right there under the tax and you add a floor space. Like, you guys do have some contracts where you can manage to solve both issues in one move if you find the right deal, I think.
The hard part, Bryce, is if you do a 2-to-1 deal, you have to leave yourself enough cap space to be able to sign a vet min, because now the Magic are only at 14 guys. So if you send 2 out and bring 1 in, you're at 13.
On top.
You still need to have about $2 to $3 million to sign a vet minimum guy.
So let's say they made that move, like Boston decided Goga is the center they want to finish off the season, whatever. They're not going to duck the tax, whatever on their end. Then you would have to do the Jet Howard move on top.
Yeah.
But I guess you got to send him, and you almost have to trade him for a minimum contract. And it becomes multifaceted moves. So it is a little bit complex. Yeah.
I think you are doing like a Goga and Tyus or a Jet and Tyus type of move, which I don't think Jet and Tyus is getting you much value in return, to be fully truthful. But
I think Goga's the name, right?
Goga's the name.
Would you be comfortable with that real quick?
Oh yeah, sure.
With Mo having and Goga's expiring, so okay.
Is he?
Right?
I think he might have one more year.
He's not.
No, he's got one more year. He signed a 3-year deal.
Mo is expiring with Jet and Tyus. Those are the expiring deals. My fault. My bad.
You're good. And I think if I were to go about this, and I did try and do this through my mock experience, is I think Jonathan Isaac's the move, right? I've gotten so low on him, Bryce, to be honest. Like, I think he's capable of being like the defender we need him to be. And I think if he's on this team, he's going to help us win a game in the playoffs this year. But when you see $15 million on the books for the next 4 years and he's only playing 14 minutes a game, and he's a negative on the offensive side. He's not even a neutral. He's a negative this year. Kind of has been for the last 2 years. It's hard to continue to justify that, particularly when you have like a guy like Noah Penda, who they are different defenders in certain ways. Like Jonathan Isaac can guard fives in the paint. Noah Penda is not that guy. Maybe he can be at some point, but like they're different heights. You got a 7-footer and like a 6'9" guy. Like they're going to have different strengths there. But I think that's kind of the way, if I was the GM, I would start looking to move. I don't know. I mean, obviously like Tyus hasn't lived up. So like I would probably try and move him, and maybe it's like 2 separate moves, one long-term and one short-term. It's just going to be an interesting situation. I haven't built up a ton of like mock trades outside of the exercise.
Here's another one
I'll
throw at you.
Yeah.
So like, because here's the nice thing about Jet and Tyus, and even Goga, if you went there, they're going to fit into a lot of the exceptions that are potentially out there.
Sure.
Like, Magic fan may not find this sexy, but like Vic Krejci has been an awesome floor spacer this year. And you could actually trade Tyus and Jet Howard for him, and that would save you $10 million, which then still gets you under the number when you have to go in and, add the 14th player to the roster or whatever.
Yeah.
So my only point here is with those numbers, especially the non-Isaac number, a lot of teams out there will have trade exceptions, especially now that like the non-tax MLE can be used as a trade exception. Like Orlando can use what's left of their 14.1 that they didn't give Tyus as a trade exception to bring in a low number as well, or the biannual if they wanted to.
That's true.
There are like mechanisms to go get somebody. Now, I'm sure Hawks fans would go, well, why are we doing this trade, or whatever. But they're just examples of the options Orlando could have that could still work. So,
and there's plenty of little options like that around the league.
Track now.
No, I mean, I have it loaded on my screen too, and I'm just like, what can we do? Yeah, it's interesting. They're gonna. And the trade deadline's coming up in like 2 or 3 weeks. So it's like
it's gotten here so fast, Steven. It's so fast.
I wasn't prepared to start talking about trade deadline stuff. And I'm like, oh, wait, I kind of need to, because it's going to be here right around the corner and it's going to be the hot topic for the next few weeks. So we should start it to do it. Just to like back out and have some fun for a second, I want to tell you the moves that I did in my mock exercise. Yes. I did Tyus. The Houston Rockets made it pretty well known that they wanted more ball handling. So I said Tyus Jones and Goga in a couple of seconds for Steven Adams. I thought that was like, I was like, cool, I'll do that. No problem. I don't want Tyus. I like Goga, but if I can get Steven Adams, like improve screening and one of the best rebounders in the league right now. Yep. And he's just like a tough mofo. He is like, he's going to bring, I think some of the Magic's culture this year has just been not as great as it has been in years past. And we can question, why is that, right? Is Mosley's voice kind of not resonating as much as it was, or guys just down on how many injuries are happening? I don't know, but I'm like, culture, screen setting, elite rebounding, sweet. And he's like New Zealand and just like a cool dude. So like, come on, let's bring in Steven Adams. And then I got involved in a 3-team trade where I sent John. It was between Miami Heat, the Grizzlies, and then the Magic, where I think Ja went to Miami. And through the whole thing, I brought on Fontecchio, and Jonathan Isaac went to the Memphis Grizzlies, and I had to give up. So I gave up like 1 second in that to get off of Jonathan Isaac. So that's kind of, those were the moves that I made. And then we're going to claim Amir Coffey off of free agents to get to the 14th guy, because he got waived by some other team. That's what I did. How did I do, Bryce?
I love the wing addition. Like I like Steven Adams a lot. I don't dislike that move at all. I just wonder, like, in the amount of minutes played, like how much more is Adams' impact than Goga's?
Sure.
But I think there's an argument that it is, right? Like he's a better offensive rebounder, right? Because he's probably the best in the NBA. The screen setting is a great point. And so when we talk about the offensive impact and the culture and all that, so I'm cool with that. Here's my thing with Savone.
His contract's a little big.
So that's why I wasn't sure what that did contract wise moving forward.
I still had to clear cap space. It kind of brought me down a little bit, but I had to still clear like another 4 million or so. And so that's why I was like, cool, I got to get off Jonathan. I couldn't get anyone to take Jet Howard. I was trying to do a Jet Howard swap and no one wanted
so
Jet.
Adams has the descending non-tax MLE deal. So it's at least descending, but yeah, you took on some money. Yeah. No, you took on some longer term
money. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Fontecchio is so fascinating to me. Obviously, I'm very, very familiar with his game. I thought it was actually one of the sneaky best moves that Troy Weaver made in Detroit. Like, he finally went out and got a floor spacer to play around Cade Cunningham, and then he got fired a few months later in the offseason. But my thing with Simone is it's like, I don't know who the real Simone Fontecchio is sometimes, in terms of like, he came in for the second half of that year in Detroit and shot the crap out of the ball. And then the next year shot it not well at all. And all of a sudden was trying to do all of this stuff off the bounce that wasn't good enough. And then I feel like he started the season in Miami like 50% from 3, and now he's down to 36. But I think the idea of Simone Fontecchio does make a ton of sense. I think Amir Coffey's like a quality wing basketball player in the NBA.
I was surprised he got waived, to be honest.
I was surprised he's on a minimum in Milwaukee and not playing. So apparently I'm just wrong about who Amir Coffey is as a basketball player. That may be my favorite, like in terms of just getting him for free. That might be my favorite move that you made, because I think Amir Coffey is an NBA basketball player.
Yeah, I think he's going to be pretty solid. And, you know, with Fontecchio, it's like if it doesn't work out, he's expiring anyways, and we can just get off the money and not have to worry about it. So that was
it's a worthy try with Fontecchio. It's definitely a worthy try with Fontecchio. Yeah, I would agree.
People are going to look at me and be like, well, this is why you're not a GM. You're right. But that's also like, I thought I did pretty good.
So, Steven, last year I did mine and I ended up with Buddy Hield and seconds. I don't even remember what all of the mechanisms were. And Pistons fans were mad at me. They're like, no, Buddy Hield sucks. I'm like, yeah, but this team can't shoot. He can. Actually, they are better from the 3-point. Like, Beasley and Tim Hardaway Jr. But it's like, I'm just going to continue to add shooting. It's not I'm pretty sure he has a non-guaranteed contract at somewhere. It was just like, it was just kind of funny to me. But that's what we all have opinions.
There wasn't many great shooters that I could get after that were like there. So I'm like, all right, I got to get like, unless I want to get real aggressive. So I couldn't do that. But yeah, I don't know. The mock deadline was fun. We'll see what Magic fans think on how I did. I don't know. I'm also just like, give me the big bruising New Zealand Steven Adams, because he's been one of my favorite players in the league forever. And I don't like Tyus. So let's move him, and that's fine.
Yep.
and also that move freed up minutes for Jace Richardson. That was another reason why I did that. I was like, because so many of us are just like, the Tyus bar is so low to be better than right now. Like, he's really just, the only thing he's doing well is protecting the ball and making passes. But part of that is because he just like, he's risk adverse in ways. He's just kind of a safe player, which is not a bad thing. But offensively, he's just not bringing anything else to the table. And defensively, he's awful. So let's see what you can get out of your rookie. It's kind of like a long-term development play. It might bring some rough patches, but let's go. Go Jace. Here's your opportunity. Cause I've been wanting to see him play more, and like, hey, might lower our guard rotation for the playoffs, but maybe you're tightening the rotation so much in the playoffs. Like, you don't really need much Jace, and you can just go from there. I don't know. That was the thought process. Cause I mean, even with Tyus on the team now, and my fake trade not happening, there's still many games I just want to see Jace over Tyus.
Sure.
It's kind of where I'm at. Tyus has been underwhelming.
Yeah, I thought that was a good move, and unfortunately, you guys ended up with the other Jones brother has been way better this season.
Way better.
Yeah.
What were you about to ask? I thought it seemed like you were about to ask something.
Just real quick, I was just wondering like what the playoff rotation would be for Orlando if it started right now. I mean, assuming health, you have the starting five. Anthony Black, is De Silva solidly in a 8-9 man rotation? Like,
let me just pull something up real quick, just so I even have all the players off the top of my head just right in front of me. So I think like, all right, obviously the starting five is what it is. That's not changing. You're probably playing. So here's like what we don't know, right? Like with Mo being back, is he normal Mo? And that shifts. It's like what we saw last year where it's like Mo, J.I., and Goga is sitting in the bench, not getting any minutes. Or is it, you're doing Mo and Goga, which is kind of an odd pairing. I don't really love it because then you're just going to get cooked on the wings no matter what on the perimeter there with your big. So I feel like kind of depends on who Mo is as a player. Is he coming back and still that like great offensive, I'm going to score you 10 points in 10 minutes type of player? Or if he's still like not looking great, and it just, I think a lot depends on who Mo is. I think Tristan Da Silva's in the rotation. Like Noah Penda's probably getting squeezed there. Yeah. And he's been playing somewhat regularly recently. And then, you're staggering one of Paulo or Franz with that second unit. I actually think in the playoffs, you're going to see like 2 of the 4 starters in the second unit at all times. Like 2 of the 4 core guys, like Franz and Suggs, or Bane and Paulo, or some form of combination of that being staggered with that second unit. Like that's what I hope we see. And then you're rounding it out with Anthony Black, Tristan Da Silva, because I think you need his shooting, and he's grown a lot as a player too. I think you kind of have to keep him in there, and then toss up between how Mo looks with the bigs. Like
so that was my thought, was like you have I think the 7 solid for me would be the starters plus Tristan Da Silva and Anthony Black.
Yes, I think that's pretty solid. I agree.
And then you get to an 8th player with whatever the Mo Batadze backup big situation is, right?
Yeah.
I find myself wanting them to have one more player. And I realize that playoff rotations can get squeezed, but if you're going to make it 3 rounds, whatever, I do think you need a 9th guy, another wing or big guard or something like that you can say like, man, I feel good about this guy in the playoffs. And it's just like, are you relying on the rookies? We've talked, multiple times that that's not Tyus Jones. Is it Jonathan Isaac? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I think they need one more big guard wing-ish type player that they feel good. For me, I think I'd feel better about him if they added the Sam Hauser, etc. type of player.
I'm in line with that mindset too. I think when I'm like, how do I want them to attack? If they were to like just leave the team the same and let's go find someone for that 15th spot, like if no moves happened, like I am constantly thinking of another guard wing type of player. And that would probably be how you could attack the playoff question too. But as it stands now, it's like, I don't want Tyus playing playoff minutes. I don't want Jace playing playoff minutes.
Right. Yeah.
You know, so it's, you know, maybe the answer is you go a little bigger and you force Jonathan Isaac in there for 10 minutes of just, bro, you're not going to play 15. You're going to play 10. And we just need you to smother the crap out of everyone defensively and just own, like, be the best defender on the court during that time. Yeah. But you're going to get the rest of your time. Because I just like, dude, how come they can't get him to play more than 12 to 14 minutes? And my guess is he's just such a negative on the offensive end that it's not worth playing him much more than that. But he was in the rotation last year and the year prior with Cleveland and the Boston series. And so I think they would just maintain Jonathan Isaac with that, because I think there's going to be matchups where, okay, if someone is staggering their power forward with the second unit, you need someone to slow him down. It's not going to be Mo and it's not going to be, you know, Goga. So you got to kind of have that Swiss Army knife defender and JI kind of there, you know, and lean into that defensive identity. And
some options.
Yeah. And the more that I think about it, like Mosley as our head coach, he's going to lean into defense. So they probably would just bring Jonathan Isaac in. I think that's where it's at, if I had to guess. So
makes sense.
Yeah. But that's a good question to have. I need to think more about playoff rotations. I haven't thought it nearly enough about that recently. Thanks for making me feel unprepared right then and there, Bryce.
The one I gave about the Pistons the other day did not make the fan base very happy. We'll see. I don't think
we'll
the Pistons
find out.
roster is going to look exactly the same anyway.
I'm going to have people in my comments saying, you're an idiot. Noah and Jace should be in the playoff rotation right now. And we're just going to play a 10-man rotation. And I'm just like, okay, cool. I'm an idiot. That's fine. Just a bald white guy hanging out talking basketball. So it's fine. Bryce, I really appreciate the time today. This was fun. He said earlier this year that we were going to get back together and talk some more Magic basketball, and we made it happen, and I'm really thankful that we did. Hopefully we can do this again a little bit later on in the season after this team gets a little bit healthier and as they get closer to the playoffs. That would be super fun. I mean, if people don't know where to find you, that's dumb, but they should know where to find you. So go ahead and give the listeners an opportunity to find you.
Yeah, at Motor City Hoops on Twitter, on Blue Sky. Anytime the Magic play the Pistons, I have the Motor City Hoops Substack where I not only give game notes and analysis on Detroit, but also the Magic. I do that for every game Detroit plays. So if you follow any other teams, you can check that out as well. The Game Theory Substack, where Sam does a bunch of video breakdowns, I do occasionally, and all of our draft content is over there. And then, of course, the Game Theory podcast, where we talk NBA at large a couple days a week.
Guys, check him out. He's putting out really, really good quality content. I get a lot of it through Game Theory and some of the Substack stuff. If you're at all interested in what's going on with the Pistons, like, he's your guy. And it's very good quality analysts and like just observations and notes on players and teams. So I can't speak highly enough of what him and Sam are putting out there in the content world, in the ether of the NBA. So Bryce, thanks again. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Monday off with your family. Thanks for taking a few minutes of your time to chat with me, and let's go Magic and Pistons.